Welcome to the Florida Divorce Podcast, your source for the information you need to successfully get through your divorce and into the next exciting chapter of life. Now, here's your host, Attorney Scott Kalish.
Hey everyone, my name is Scott Kalish. I am a divorce and family lawyer here in South Florida. Today I want to talk to you guys about lump sum alimony. It's something that comes up fairly frequently in my practice. People that are faced with potentially having to pay alimony, they sometimes want to understand it and kind of weigh their options and examine the pros, examine the cons, and see if it makes sense for them. And also people that would be receiving alimony, people that are requesting alimony, they also ask, right? If the money's available, it's definitely a topic of conversation, and it's something that we go through fairly frequently and at least talk about it, have a discussion. So I'll go through in this episode like the benefits of lump sum alimony and also some potential drawbacks as well, and just run you guys through some scenarios so that you can fully understand it when you're thinking about your own case. But before I do, and before I go there, just give you some more of a general understanding of what lump sum alimony is, right? So to begin, lump sum alimony isn't really a type of alimony. It's the form through which someone either pays or receives our statutorily defined alimony. So what do I mean by that? So under Florida law, we have certain types of alimony. If you go into the library of this podcast, you'll be able to get the most recent episode on alimony and listen to that podcast if you don't really know what I'm talking about, but I'll run through it really quickly. Under Florida law, there's only a few alimony options that the court can use to award someone alimony, right? So the options are they can award them durational alimony, bridge the gap alimony, or what's called rehabilitational alimony. So when you're asking for lump sum, you're really asking for either of those three just paid in a lump sum form. It's not like a fourth type of alimony. It's just really the form of payment. But before you're able to ask for lump sum alimony, you have to show three things. You have to show, one, that there's some special necessity justifying a lump sum amount, or lump sum award rather. The second thing you have to prove is you have to prove some sort of unusual circumstances that require a non-modifiable award of support, because the concept of lump sum alimony is it's paid all at once or in a couple payments, and it's not broken down into monthly payments. So essentially, if you are awarded lump sum alimony, it's not modifiable, which is a huge deal in divorce and in the alimony world because situations change, circumstances change. So under Florida law, generally speaking, an award of alimony is modifiable. So when you award lump sum alimony, you're making it non-modifiable, right? Which is, I think, a huge right that you're either giving or taking away by awarding lump sum alimony. So that's really important to really hone in on and really think about before you elect to have a lump sum alimony award or if you make that request, right? So got to be careful there. And then the last thing that you have to consider or that you have to prove is that the spouse that would be paying the lump sum alimony award is in a financial position to make the lump sum payment without endangering their economic status, right? That basically boils down to, do they have the money? Are they going to be giving you their last dollar type of thing, right? So the law really isn't going to allow that if they have no other money available other than what you're asking for. So they're probably not going to clean someone out for a lump sum alimony award, right? So there's really a difference, I guess, in how this plays out, right? So this can play out in a couple of different ways, right? You can be negotiating for lump sum in mediation, or you can be in trial asking the judge for a lump sum payment. And you really have to sort of compartmentalize the benefits and the drawbacks based on where you're at. Are you in court or are you in mediation? For instance, if you're in mediation, you're asking for possibly lump sum alimony in an amount that is lesser than if you would otherwise receive payments over the course of, let's say, several years. The lesser amount really comes from, hey, my money today is worth more because of inflation today, all in a lump sum, than it is over the course of, let's say, 10 years. So at least in mediation, that is used sometimes as a justification for paying someone less. So like, for instance, if you're asking for $1,000 a month over the course of 10 years, that's $120,000 in payments. If you're asking for a lump sum and mediation, then you're probably going to be asking for a little bit less to compensate for that, because obviously today's money is worth more than $1,000 a month for the next 10 years. So depending upon like where you are in the process, that will influence, I think, how you're handling this issue of lump sum alimony. But I just want to run through some like benefits of, or potential benefits of lump sum alimony, right? That at least I came up with when I was preparing for this episode and when I'm like thinking about this issue, right? And that's the number one thing that I think should be highlighted here is the fact that it's non-modifiable. If you agree to a lump sum award and you're the paying spouse, it's non-modifiable. So you're not going to have to worry about your spouse coming back and taking you back to court to modify it upwards. Like, you can imagine a scenario where a marriage lasts for, let's say, just over 20 years, and the asking spouse, right, the spouse requesting alimony is asking for alimony for 75% of the marriage, which the law allows. So 15 years. So you can imagine a scenario where the person paying alimony is not going to want to be brought back to court in maybe year 7 or year 8 or year 9 and having to relitigate this alimony issue. This is especially a concern if at the time of divorce, the would-be paying spouse is making less than what they typically has made, or they're likely to make more in the future, right? If they're sort of on their way up, so to speak, in their career. So negotiating for or asking for a lump sum award will take care of that issue, right? So to prevent the receiving spouse from taking them back to court, you're going to avoid that completely. So that's a benefit. Again, another benefit that we had just discussed was that, at least in mediation, you can negotiate for a lesser payment. You can negotiate for paying less upfront than you would otherwise pay over the course of several months or years. So that's definitely a benefit to negotiating for a lump sum amount. You don't have to chase monthly payments. This is for the person that is receiving the alimony, right? There might be some peace of mind in just knowing, hey, you got it all up front, and now you don't have to chase the paying spouse over the next several months or years. I mean, that's a huge benefit for someone that is concerned that the paying spouse is just not going to pay, or they're going to jump from job to job and they're going to be deceptive and give you an issue with making sure the alimony is paid on time. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Also, this is just more of like a peace of mind benefit, is that, hey, if you have no children, then by negotiating a lump sum alimony award or lump sum alimony payment, you literally get to sever all ties with this person forever. So this has come up in my practice before in conversation with clients and potential clients that, they're just like, I just want nothing to do with this person. And I just want this divorce to be like the final chapter in our relationship. So if you don't have any children, I mean, that can be accomplished if you negotiate for a lump sum alimony award. Otherwise, you're going to be tied to them, over the next several months or again, years, if they're paying monthly alimony, and that alimony amount will be just a monthly reminder that, hey, you guys are connected. So a lump sum alimony award definitely prevents that from happening. Also, you get to move on with your life. So let's say that you go to trial and the judge awards you durational alimony for, I don't know, let's say 10 years. That means, at least under Florida law, you cannot get remarried or cohabitate with someone and then live in a supportive relationship, it's called, without jeopardizing your alimony payment, right? Because that's like an event that could lead to termination. So if you decide to get remarried, then you're going to lose your alimony. So that might be huge. So definitely keep that in mind. If you're interested in getting remarried, which I'm sure most people aren't if they're listening to this podcast, but if they are, right, or you just never know. A lump sum alimony award definitely gives you complete freedom to do whatever you want without worrying about the consequences. So those are the benefits that I came up with. There's probably a few other ones, but I just wanted to give you guys a sense of some things that I typically look at when I'm considering lump sum alimony for people, and we're kind of talking through it. There are potential drawbacks to it, right? So let's shift gears and talk about some potential drawbacks. So this one is really for the paying spouse, right? So if the paying spouse is close to a position in their life where they're going to have a good case to modify the alimony award or terminate it downwards. So this scenario that jumps out at me is the person that's very close to retirement. I had actually a case recently that I settled where this was the exact issue. If you have a long-term marriage, a marriage that lasted more than 20 years, and you're close to retirement, you definitely don't want to agree to a lump sum alimony award, right? At least a large lump sum alimony award, because under Florida law, you're going to be able to modify it or terminate it. And when you retire, if that's going to affect your ability to pay the monthly amount, right? So if a retirement is going to drastically reduce the amount of income that you have, you're not going to want to pay or agree to a lump sum amount if you're close to retirement. You're just going to want to agree to the regular amount of alimony and then just go back and modify it. Again, everyone's situation is different, right? So don't take this as like specific legal advice to your unique situation. But I had a case recently that I settled where it was a long-term marriage. I think it was like 40 years and my client was about to retire. And why would I agree to like 30-year lump sum alimony award payment, right? Well, a payment that would be similar to what the spouse would be entitled to like over the course of like 30 years. No way. We agreed to a specific amount. Luckily, we agreed to a specific amount that would terminate at a specific day. If they don't agree to that, if you have an opposing counsel or opposing party on the other side saying, no, we're not going to agree to just to have it automatically terminate at the retirement, you agree to pay alimony for a certain period of time, and then you go back and modify it or terminate it once you hit retirement or are close to retirement. So you're not going to want to pay a very large lump sum amount if you're close to retirement. So that's kind of the sense of the first potential drawback. So this next potential drawback is for the paying spouse, right? So if the paying spouse is in a relatively unstable job or industry, they may want to hold their cash and not agree to a lump sum alimony award, right? So if you work in, real estate or something where the market really dictates, how well you do, then there may be a benefit if you foresee there being an issue, right, in the near future with your income, that if things are good now, but not great or may not be great in 6 months or a year or 2 years, then you may want that ability to like modify it downwards if things are not great income wise for you. So if you just agree to a lump sum amount now, again, it's not modifiable. You're not going to be able to go back and get some of that money back. So if you're thinking that you may need to modify it downwards because your job may not be super secure, super stable, or your industry might not be super stable, then you may want to kind of leave that possibility open to where you can go back and modify it downwards. This is one for the receiving spouse, right? The spouse that is going to be asking for alimony, right? A potential drawback for them is that the lump sum may not be enough, right? So the paying spouse may not have enough money to really make it worthwhile to take all the money up front, right? Rather than over the course of, several years, for instance. So you have to keep that in mind. And also for the receiving spouses, you may want to go back and modify it upwards to meet your need. Your spouse may be saying, hey, right now my income is not there. It's not as high as it has been in previous years. And for that reason, like I could only pay X. Let's say they could only pay $3,000, but you really need $5,000. But you know that their job is on the incline, right? And that maybe they hit a temporary issue, right, in their career. Maybe ran into something that was holding them back and they previously made way more money and they hit maybe like a valley in their career. In the next few years, there's a good chance they're going to make a lot more money. The $3,000 won't necessarily cover your whole need right now. In a couple of years, if they're on the incline and if they're making more money, you may want the ability to go back to court and modify it upwards. So that could be a potential drawback to just accepting some minuscule low-level, lump sum alimony payment, right now. The last potential drawback is for people that are awarded or are asking for rehabilitative alimony, right? The fact that rehabilitative alimony is subject to modification, the person, if the asking spouse doesn't comply with the plan, again, I'm going to point you to another episode in the podcast, but essentially rehabilitative alimony requires there to be like a specific plan. So the receiving spouse has to really set forth the steps that they're going to take to rehabilitate themselves so that they can be self-supporting, right? Independent from the alimony. So a reason to agree to rehabilitative alimony sometimes is that, hey, you know that you can go back to court and have it modified if the person doesn't follow through with the rehabilitative plan to get them to be self-supporting. So if you just agree to pay lump sum alimony for an otherwise rehabilitative alimony plan that where you pay over the course of several months or years, then you're basically removing your ability to modify it if they don't comply with the plan. So the scenario is your spouse says, hey, I want to go to nursing school. It's going to take 4 years and I need X amount of dollars for the tuition, X amount of dollars for room and board, for groceries, that whole thing. And they have, an amount that basically boils down to $5,000, let's say, over the course of 4 years. So really quickly, times 48, that's $240,000, right? So if you just agree to give the person $240,000 as a lump sum payment, and then they decide not to go to nursing school, then there really isn't a remedy for that. You can't fix that. You're not getting your money back. But if you agree to $5,000 a month for 48 months so that the person can go to nursing school, and let's say after the first semester they drop out, you can go to court and have the judge modify the rehabilitative alimony to either zero, or I'm sure the receiving spouse would argue that they need it converted to durational alimony or something, but, have that discussion at that point in time. I think there's a huge drawback, huge negative to just agreeing to like lump sum payment, agree to a lump sum payment for a rehabilitative alimony scheme or plan, right? So that's definitely something for you to consider. All right. Well, I think that's enough for today. I think I gave you guys a decent insight into lump sum alimony and gave you guys the potential benefits, some potential drawbacks, explained to you what lump sum alimony is and how it's not like a separate form of alimony, or it's not a separate type of alimony. It's really a separate, form of payment, or another form of payment, a different form of payment, rather than, over the course of several years or months in the form of like monthly payments. So yeah, there you go. I enjoyed recording this. I hope that you guys got value from it. If you guys are interested in potentially working with us, feel free to give us a call at 561-208-1859 or reaching out to us via our website, which is kjlawfla.com. And that is, again, kjlawfla.com. Be certainly open to discussing your case and determining whether or not we think that we'd be a good fit for you. And if you're a good fit for us, we'd be happy to represent you and help you the best way that we can. So with that, I appreciate you listening and have a great rest of your day or evening. And I look forward to the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Florida Divorce Podcast. To learn the 10 secrets behind every successful divorce, visit floridadivorcepodcast.com. If you'd like Scott's help in your divorce case, go to kjlawfla.com.